following is a Galactic Digital Studios production. Like Eric Bischoff in 2002, I'm back and better than ever. And no, I'm not going to sing the song. I don't want to get a copyright strike from YouTube. But unlike CM Punk, I'm not going to get in a fight with my coworkers and fuck this up for me and everybody else. This is Are We Not Entertained? Part of the Closing Tag Network. I am Raul Smith. I am Head of Development and Design over at Galactic Digital Studios. If you are wanting video editing, logo design, graphic design, web development, or SEO services done for your business, search for Galactic Digital Studios at galacticdigitalstudios.com. Galactic Digital Studios, say that name 5 times fast, out of this world service at down-to-earth prices. To quote a famous now unemployed man, I've got a lot of things I want to get off my chest. A fair warning, this episode is going to be heavy on the wrestling takes, even though there is going to be a little bit something about streaming services at the end of this episode. So if you want to skip past all the wrestling stuff, maybe fast forward the episode for about 10 minutes. You should be fine after 10 minutes, I think. I don't know. It's going to be a lengthy one. Let's just dive right into it. I mentioned the former AEW and WWE champion, so let's start there. If you've been living under a rock for these last couple of months, CM Punk not only got fired from AEW with cause, but was also turned down by WWE. If I had a soundboard, I would probably play the losing track from The Price is Right about now. According to several reports from both PW Insider and Fightful, two of the more trustworthy news sources out there for wrestling, WWE officials confirmed that they did hear from Punk's camp regarding a new deal to allow the former WWE champion to return to the company, but that they denied his request. But they did say that no forever is not yet on the table. So let's take a look back and see how we got here. And yes, a lot of this is going to be rehashed from the blog post that I made a couple weeks ago. By the way, entertainment.theclosingtag.com if you want to read my thoughts about Adam Copeland and why I feel like he's a better fit in AEW than CM Punk. So going back to 2011, right before the now famous or now infamous, whichever you prefer, pipe bomb promo, CM Punk expressed his interest in signing a new deal with WWE. He cited at the time creative differences and how he felt that the product had gotten stale and stagnant, which, honestly, where's the lie? Then came the infamous promo in Las Vegas where, among other things, he called John Laurinaitis, who at the time was the head of talent relations in WWE, a douchebag yes man, and how the WWE machine was going to continue to make money in spite of itself, and that Vince McMahon was a millionaire who should be a billionaire. Well, I guess he can take that one back now, since Vince has since now joined the Billionaires Club, especially with this Endeavor deal. Going into the match at Money in the Bank in July 2011 between CM Punk and John Cena, who was the WWE champion at the time, there was a lot of uncertainty on whether or not Punk would re-sign with the company. The contract was legitimately set to expire that night at midnight. That was not part of the storyline. That was legitimate. Punk re-signed with the company 20 minutes before the show went live, and he would go on that night to win the championship from John Cena. Fast forward to 2014. CM Punk again was disenfranchised and frustrated with the direction the company was going. The company had just recently brought back Dave Bautista and had him win that year's Royal Rumble match, despite the fact that the crowd was clearly behind Daniel Bryan, all but solidifying a main event match between Batista and his former Evolution teammate Randy Orton in that year's WrestleMania. Punk was livid in that he felt there was no direction for his character, as he was scheduled to face and probably lose to Triple H at that same event. Punk, furious about this decision, informed both Triple H, who was at the time second in command, and Vince McMahon that he was walking out on the company. Punk was furious about this decision and informed both Triple H, who was at the time second in command, and Vince McMahon that he was walking out on the company. He would not be seen or heard from on WWE television ever again, save that short stint on Fox Sports' WWE show Backstage. 7 years would pass by before Punk was ever seen in wrestling again. Punk was at first just teased by both AEW and its employees, most notably Darby Allin, who dropped the famous line about this is a place to be to prove yourself, even if you think you're the best in the world. Punk would show up, and at first everybody seemed on board and happy that he arrived in AEW. Many of the wrestlers and fans felt like Punk provided credibility and name recognition to a company sorely in need of it. Now keep in mind, at the time, AEW was only 2 years old when they got Punk. 2. They were only in existence for 2 years by that time. That's important to note. After a while, though, there were issues bubbling up to the surface. First person to speak on these issues publicly was Eddie Kingston, who, as of this recording, is serving as the Ring of Honor World Champion. Punk was informed by Kingston that he feels that he is mentally weak and fragile heading into their match at an upcoming event. Then it was Hangman Adam Page, who at the time was the AEW World Champion. Page allegedly went into business for himself and proceeded to cut a scathing promo on CM Punk, noting that he needs to save AEW from Punk heading into their match. Punk would go on to win the AEW Championship from Page. But perhaps the most telling remarks from one of the wrestlers during this time was from one of the cornerstones of AEW, Jon Moxley, who proceeded to call Punk mentally and physically fragile and proclaimed that he has no heart. It would be 2 weeks after this promo that they would have their match at All Out in 2022, Labor Day weekend that year, just 1 year after Punk arrived. Keep all of that in mind. Punk would go on to win the championship from Moxley, setting up what would have been a classic program between Punk and young up-and-comer Maxwell Jacob Friedman, better known as MJF. But after the event at their post-show press conference, Punk would go on a 20-minute profanity-laced tirade about his frustrations with the wrestling media, Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks over leaked information about how he was somehow responsible for his former best friend Colt Cabana somehow getting fired from AEW. He would go on to call Hangman Adam Page. Sorry, my throat's getting dry. It's been a while since I've done this. He would go on to call Hangman Adam Page an empty-headed dumb fuck, quote unquote, and comment on the Bucks and Omega by saying, quote, "I'm old, I'm fucking tired, and I work with fucking children," end quote. I told you it was profanity-laced. He would then cap it off by saying if anybody had an issue with him to, quote, come find me, end quote. Long story short, brawl breaks out backstage. Chairs are thrown, people get bit, and suspensions were levied. Punk would not be seen or heard from again until May of this year, partly because of the criminal investigation involving the fight backstage, and partially because he had a torn muscle in his arm during his match with Moxley. Reports were circulating that Punk had agreed to come back to AEW, but that he would need to be on his own show independent of the Bucks and Omega. Enter AEW Collision. The Bucks and Omega would stay on Dynamite while Punk would stay on Collision. But then it got worse from there. Pot shots were taken by Punk against the Bucks. Never forget the famous line, I'm a genuine article in an industry full of counterfeit bucks. Ouch. A Steel, who had been fired for his role in the fight at All Out, was rehired and brought back to work exclusively with Punk. And then Punk would go on to ban other talents from working on Collision, even going as far as to ban the Vice President of Talent Relations, Christopher Daniels, from attending the shows. Then All In, the weekend before Labor Day weekend, happened. Punk would get in yet another physical confrontation backstage, this time with Jack Perry. After his match with Hook, Perry was confronted by Punk about using real glass during his match. Punk's confrontation would be short-lived, although physical, as he had his match with Samoa Joe next. After the match, though, Punk was confronted by AEW president and owner Tony Khan. While we don't know all the details, what we do know is that Punk allegedly yelled that he hates this place and that a monitor hit Tony Khan in the head. Punk would not last a full week after this incident. That following Friday, Tony Khan publicly fired CM Punk with cause as a result from an internal investigation into the matter. It is also important to note that Jack Perry still hasn't been seen or heard from, resulting from his actions at All In as of this recording. I don't know, maybe by the time this episode drops, he will have popped up on Dynamite or Collision. I don't know. But as of right now, Perry has not been seen or heard from since. Well, this of course fueled all kinds of speculation about Punk going back to WWE. Wow, my throat is just doing a number. This was stemmed from the recent visit backstage at Raw in Chicago weeks before his return to AEW. Those reports and speculation were fueled by people within Punk's camp, stating that he would like to go back to WWE at some point. But since then, WWE has declined Punk's request to return to the company. Now, it's important to note, whatever information that was unraveled in that investigation that Tony Khan had after the incident All In London, that WWE probably has notes of that report as well, of that investigation. So that might have played a role in their decision to not bring him in. Now, how did we get here? Well, it's really simple. And I say what I'm about to say as a fan of CM Punk's. But the man is volatile, short-tempered, not exactly a people person. And by his own admission in his WWE documentary, CM Punk, Best in the World, he has made a career out of pissing the wrong people off and burning bridges. CM Punk may have just burned one bridge too many. It's a sad and miserable end to one of the greatest careers of this generation. And no matter what you think of him as a person, what you think of how he handled his business, you cannot deny that he was one of the greats of this current generation. And now I anxiously await the Dark Side of the Ring episode to drop in 5 years. A friendly reminder to check out the blogs that I write occasionally on theclosingtag.com, like the blog about Adam Copeland and CM Punk. Just go to the upper right corner and you should either see a hamburger menu or the network tab. Just go to the network tab, select which blog you want to catch up on, and go from there. All blogs are separated by topic so as to not dilute the main feed. Also, while you're there, be sure to click the donate button. I may not do this as a full-time job, but every little bit helps to secure better equipment, better soundproofing, just things in general. Your donations will also earn you a special shout out on the air if you want one. Again, that's theclosingtag.com. Don't forget to put the in front, theclosingtag.com. We should be putting archives from YouTube on the appropriate channels as well in the coming weeks. So since we're on the topic of AEW and WWE, there's a little bit of a disturbing pattern that I'm noticing when it comes to fans of really anything. I touched on this in the last episode with the Biden stance and the Trumpists. But really it extends well beyond politics. And I believe, it just boils down to believing that somebody is either inherently good or evil based solely on the letter next to their name. Like if I put an R next to my name, I'm sure half of my friends would be like, "You're a fucking traitor," and da-da-da-da. It extends even past beyond like pro wrestling and believing a company is inherently without fault or doomed to fail simply because of the letters in their name. This has become a widespread and frankly disturbing phenomenon that has encompassed politics, sports, entertainment, just life in general. This feeling of tribalism, that in order to be a fan of something or someone, or to support something or someone, you have to think that nothing they do is wrong and nothing they say is false. See, I was raised a little bit differently than that. I was raised to believe that no one, I don't care who you are or where you're from or what you've done, no one is without fault. No one is infallible. Just like no one is without any good qualities. So since we just got done talking about Punk, let's visit wrestling fans first in general. Now, for the most part, wrestling fans that I've encountered are knowledgeable, courteous, and they tend to listen to both sides of an argument before making an informed decision. But, and here's where the pleasantry ends, there's a very small group, very vocal group, but still small, of wrestling fans that will either represent WWE or AEW and openly pray for the downfall of the opponents or whatever, based on such menial, low-hanging bullshit. Now, there are legitimate concerns and criticisms of both companies that I feel like, because it's mostly voiced by people saying, I hope this company fails in 5 years, it kind of gets lost. And it gets completely dismissed as, oh, you're hating on this particular thing. So, allow me, as a fair and unbiased observer of all things professional wrestling, to lay out some faults that I find with not just AEW, but also WWE. For WWE, and this was before they merged with Endeavor and UFC, it was the over-rehearsed, robotic-sounding, poorly written dialogue that makes even C-list level porn seem witty and intellectual by comparison. Don't ask how I know this. It's just a thing. It's also their misuse of the women's division, which can be trailed back to one of the people in charge, that of course being Vince McMahon. However, to Endeavor's credit, they seem to have given more creative control in recent weeks to Triple H, a man who actually cares about women's wrestling and showcasing women as more than just a walking, talking set of plastic boobs. I would also throw in the fact that their flagship show, Monday Night Raw, seems like a chore to sit through most nights, but I chalk that up to USA Network's insistence that the show be 3 hours long. Lesson of the day, kids. Sometimes less is more. I would also add WWE's dealings with the Saudi government as a negative, whether people want to admit that or not. Now I go to AEW. Strap yourselves in. This one's going to be a long one. Let's start with the guy at the top, Tony Khan, president and owner of AEW. Before the Punk incident, Khan was viewed as the nice guy boss. Almost like he's more of a fan with a lot of money than a wrestling promoter that knows what he's doing. Now, to his credit, Khan has given some creative control to guys that actually do know what they're doing, as my stomach grumbles. Guys like Danielson, guys like Jericho. Since we brought up how women are showcased in WWE, I want to bring up that same topic here. The women in AEW have maybe one macho show per week, and 9 times out of 10, there's a title involved. Tony Khan, bless his heart, does not know how to properly promote or book women's wrestling. He just doesn't. There are a lot of times where he will promote or book a particular wrestler for a very long period of time, and then for an even longer period of time, they will completely disappear off the face of the earth. As a prime example, I bring up Wardlow. Those who know. Now, whether the audio issues on the shows is a Tony Khan production team issue or a TBS issue, you can't deny that these issues still exist, even 4 years later. His insistence on promoting Ring of Honor, another promotion that he has purchased, is neither here nor there. I don't fault Tony Khan for trying to cross-promote, but my main issue is that you have very talented, very recognizable names on the Ring of Honor brand, like Samoa Joe, like Athena, that are stashed away in Ring of Honor and aren't really used on AEW television to help promote the brand. Now, to his credit, Tony has started using Samoa Joe more and more in recent weeks. Partly because I feel of Joe's rising popularity after his portrayal as Sweet Tooth in the hit TV show Twisted Metal. Yes, that was Samoa Joe behind the mask, even though that was Will Arnett's voice. So let's kind of flip that a little bit. Now all the people that are tired of hearing me talk about wrestling can come filter back in. We're about to talk to about other stuff now. Now you can apply this same sense of tribalism to just about any medium of entertainment. Let's talk about Star Wars fans for a minute. You have Star Wars fans that think that the sequels are just terrible and they suck and there's no redeeming qualities about them. And then there are fans that will go to bat for the sequels and they'll just think that it's just great. It's everything that they ever wanted out of Star Wars. And you have online wars going back and forth and it's just chaos. Same thing about the way, or same thing by the way about Star Wars fans and the Book of Boba Fett. Star Trek fans are the same way. I feel like people hate on Discovery just to fit in with the tribalists and the gatekeepers. And yeah, Discovery's got some issues. It's got a lot of issues, but I find it to be enjoyable. I'm not going to hate on it blindly like some people do, or just say that it's too woke to be Star Trek. By the way, Star Trek's always been woke, so there's that. I will openly admit that I am guilty of this as well. I find absolutely no redeeming qualities about reality television. I don't find anything real about reality TV, and a lot of it is contrived, rehearsed, played up for drama bullshit, and offers nothing of substance or taste. However, I feel the same way about a lot of other mediums, not just blindly lumping all reality TV into the same category. I do tend to enjoy the competition shows. There are some competition shows that I absolutely love. Chopped is one of them. Beat Bobby Flay is one of them. Not just food stuff, but like Blown Away. Great show on Netflix, by the way. Blown Away. Go check it out. It is awesome. But then again, I'm a sucker for glass making. So, there's that. Even though I find a lot of what they do on Kitchen Nightmares to be orchestrated and rehearsed and played up for drama, I even enjoy that sometimes. So you know what? There's things to enjoy about everything. It is important to like what you like and dislike what you dislike. But don't make it difficult on everybody else. Like, I like certain things, and I'll suggest certain things to other people. For instance, my ex-mother-in-law, I suggested the TV show The Shield one time, and she didn't like it. She gave it an honest try. After 2 episodes, she's like, no, this ain't for me. I was okay with it, because I know it's not for everybody. And she didn't get defensive. She didn't like, oh, how could you like this show? Da 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 da. We just left it at that. She didn't like it. I do. It's one of the greatest TV shows of all time, in my opinion. But if your only defense of what you don't like is it's too woke, that tells me you're trying really too hard to fit in with the wrong crowd. And you need to step outside your bubble every once in a while. I brought up the whole thing revolving around Cuties one time. If you don't know, Cuties was a movie on Netflix that was documenting child beauty pageants. And I said at the time, if you're going to bring the energy on how Netflix is sexualizing kids with this movie, you need to bring that same energy, not just to toddlers and tiaras, but also to child beauty pageants as a whole. Stop attending them. Stop financially supporting them. Stop glorifying them. Then we can have a discussion. I guess what I'm trying to say with these rants, last couple episodes, is that people need to think for themselves. Not just blindly think that something is great or somebody is great just because they're right about 2 or 3 things. Or they're automatically just the greatest thing ever just because they bring 2 or 3 things that bring joy to your life. It's okay to find faults with things. Married couples find faults with each other all the time. That doesn't make them love each other any less. Also, stop hounding Adam Copeland and calling him a traitor in his mentions on social media. You do not work for WWE. Vince McMahon is not coming to your house to personally give you a blowjob. Stop embarrassing yourself. Go outside and seek help. So, there's no really easy way to say this. The streaming bubble is popped. And what I mean by that is this. And if this sounds like I'm going more off the cuff with this story, it kind of does seem that way because I ran out of time before I could write a script for this. That's okay. So the streaming bubble is popped. And how do I know this? It's the simple fact that streaming services are starting to panic. Now you have streaming services like Amazon Prime Video, like Netflix, like YouTube TV, like all these different ones. They are set in stone. They're not going anywhere, at least not yet. But then you have Disney Plus, who is panicking. They're losing subscribers. They are not doing very well financially, and creatively, they're not so great either. The last two Marvel shows, not counting Loki, because I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch Loki yet. The last two Marvel shows that were released on Disney Plus have felt a little off. That magic that Marvel used to have back in the day doesn't seem to be there now. And a large part of it is there's no creative direction. And this was evident when the reports came out that apparently Netflix, or Disney rather, has pretty much dismissed all the writers from the TV show Daredevil, because apparently they wanted the Netflix Daredevil and not a Disney Plusified version. And now there's word going around that Paramount Plus is making cuts. Paramount Plus is a streaming service that offers a lot of really good shows. Shows like Yellowstone, shows like Beavis and Butthead, shows like South Park. But I venture to guess, and I'm part of it, I'll admit that openly, a large percentage of the subscriber base for Paramount Plus, I would venture to guess, subscribe to Paramount Plus primarily for their Star Trek content. And in the last several weeks, Paramount Plus has not only canceled Star Trek Prodigy, they are on the verge of potentially canceling Star Trek Lower Decks as well. This also comes on the heels of the fact that Discovery is coming into its last season. Star Trek Picard is already wrapped up. A lot of the shows that Paramount Plus has brought in to help kind of satiate the classic Trek content, so like Star Trek the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Don't Mind the Train in the background. All of these shows that Paramount Plus has brought in, they're not seeing a lot of increased revenue. And so they're hitting the panic button. You're seeing a lot of that with streaming services right now. HBO Max is a prime example. But I think it speaks to a much bigger problem. And I think the bigger problem is that the streaming bubble has burst. A lot of these different streaming services that came about after Disney Plus had its major success are starting to fall by the wayside. like I said, Netflix and Amazon, they're solid. They're gold. They're not going anywhere. But a lot of it has to do with original content. Now, in addition to catalogs that have classic content. So, for instance, with Disney Plus, you not only have the modern day Marvel stuff, you also have classic Disney movies and shows. You have classic Fox cartoons like Spider-Man, like X-Men. With Paramount Plus, like I mentioned, it's a lot of Star Trek content. It's a lot of, different spin-offs from Star Trek. Amazon has a kind of a revolving door of content that comes in and out, in and out. Netflix is the same way. A lot of the business model from them revolve around a revolving door of content that they keep cycling in and out. And I think that might be the key to saving services like Max, like Disney Plus, like Paramount. It certainly isn't going to be raising prices. I can promise you that. But there may be another solution. And I know people that dislike Amazon and dislike Netflix is not going to want to hear this. But the bigger ones, like Netflix, like Amazon Prime Video, like YouTube TV, should look very seriously into adding like Showtime, Disney Plus, Paramount, all these different services as add-ons for their service. So let's take YouTube TV, for example. YouTube TV by about $55 a month. You get your basic channels. You get your ABC, your NBC, your CBS, your Fox, your all these different basic channels. But you also get some add-on content. Just recently, they added the NFL Sunday Ticket. That's an add-on that you can add for an additional fee on top of the $54.99 a month. Amazon's the same way. They've already got Stars as an add-on. They've already got Paramount Plus as an add-on. You can subscribe to Amazon for the $16 a month. By the way, free shipping included with that. That's always a good sign, but only for different, like select material. But anyway, I'm rambling now. But with your Amazon, you have these different add-ons that you can add on for like $5 a month more. I think Netflix should start doing the same thing. And there should be an agreement that comes to between Netflix and Disney or Netflix and Showtime, and have those as add-ons on top of your Netflix subscription. And I think that's the way to save some of these streaming services. Because if you don't, if something doesn't change soon, we're probably going back to the era of overpriced cable. And I really don't want to go back. I really don't. I don't think my wallet could handle it. Or my sanity. Again, can we clearly, once and for all, address this? Why am I paying $70 a month for basic cable? And I mean, this was before streaming services existed. Yeah, I get the basic stuff, and yeah, it's cool and whatnot. But I get like 50 fucking channels, and only 3 of them I actually watch. Is there no way to filter out the ones that I don't want? No names mentioned. Fox News. Isn't that a thing that could happen? I mean, isn't that what streaming services were supposed to be about when it first started? Just a thought. Just throwing that out there. Cox, Comcast, Xfinity, whatever you want to call yourselves these days. Can we just come to that agreement, please? Anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching, listening, downloading, and hyping up the show. This has been a long time coming, and I wanted to make sure that the time was right before I brought it back. Right now, the plan is to drop 3 different episodes a week. The third one for this week is coming on Friday, which is a tech episode. It'll be short and sweet. Keep an eye out on all the platforms for that. You can find the podcast on Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Facebook, and YouTube. Quick programming notes, as I mentioned on Monday's episode, we are still in the process, as of this recording, of finishing up a couple of things with Apple Podcasts. So this episode may be a little late on that platform, but don't worry, we are coming back on that one. Also, another side note, Google Podcasts is going away as of mid-2024, but no worries, since we're already on YouTube and Google Podcasts is transitioning to YouTube anyway, you'll be able to still find us there. Thank you again for everybody that has watched, listened, downloaded, donated, all the things for the podcasts. And as always, remember to include your closing tags. This has been a Galactic Digital Studios production.